All right. When I heard I was presenting between 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock on a Friday, figured we needed some slides. Just want to start out with a disclaimer. I am not now, nor have I ever been, a registered member of the Republican Party. That may surprise some of you, I don't know, but I never have been. Those of you who've studied the McCarthy era will recognize the phrasing there. That was a but I'm going to talk about the Republican Party and the 2016 election, and just hopefully make a few points along the way. So first, just a little bit of conceptual framework for trying to understand what really happened in 2016 and whether the Republican Party can, in my view, learn the correct lessons of 2016 or not. I have a kind of meta framework for trying to understand contemporary politics that I've been experimenting with, and it comes from Pierre Menand, so it's not really mine. This is the way of viewing modern democracy as a system of separations. So as a separation of professions or division of labor, a separation of powers, separation of church and state, separation of civil society activities from the state, separation between represented and representative, and then finally, maybe the area which is in a way most obvious as we see the modern scientific project spin more and more out of control, the separation, or the modern technological project rather, the separation of facts and values or science and life. And I think what we're seeing is, at least in many ways, a reaction against this regime of separations. Not in every respect or at all times, but in a lot of ways. I mean, I think there are a lot of phenomena that fit into this. Obviously, we're not going to put away the division of labor. That was a plus. You know, we like the division of labor. But what about the sense that the purpose of one's profession has been separated from a national purpose? Isn't that a separation that is experiencing some reaction? I think it is. So obviously, maybe there's not a strong reaction against separation of church and state. On the other hand, there is an increasing awareness that there is at least a kind of there are forms of unofficially established religion, sort of religion of personal fulfillment or something like that. They're kind of forms of religious life that go along with modern society, such that it's not quite correct anymore to speak of a total separation of religion and society. So I think we're seeing a reaction against this regime of separations, which I would put under the term reintegration. I don't know if this is a math term. It could be a math term. Sounds kind of mathy. You know, there's also a political phenomenon called integralism, which also is a kind of math-sounding term. And I think this might be. I think this is a good descriptor. So that's the context for some of my remarks. I think that's a better description than, or more capacious description than populism or nationalism. I mean, you could have nationalism with all of these different separations. So maybe nationalism is part of the reaction against the sense that one's profession or economic life has become detached from any sort of national project. So there are a lot of the terms that we use, I think, capture some of the phenomena, and I'm at least experimenting with the idea that they all fit under this concept of reintegration. So what happened in 2016? Well, we remember what a lot of people thought was going to happen at the beginning of 2017. Unfortunately, this has not panned out, but no, I'm just kidding. So David Frum wrote in The Atlantic in early 2017 how to build an autocracy. That's what was coming. This was what was in the headlines. A lot of people who were watching the 2016 election as it unfolded sensed, and what my colleagues have talked about as well, that something deeper was afoot, and really we were starting to see a kind of manifestation, maybe even starting with Brexit, which had happened the summer before the 2016 election, of a reaction against some of these separations. So some of you know that I'm very fond of this next chart. And so I'm just going to do a little chart talk for a minute. This is a visual map of the 2016 electorate. Along the y-axis, I think that's the up and down one, is the the 2016 electorate according to economic dimension, and left to right is the social views of the 2016 electorate. So on the left of the x, sorry, did I get those the other way around? Yeah, sorry, I did. Yeah. So the x-axis is the economic dimension. Over on the left, you've got more economically liberal positions. Over on the right, more economically conservative, or even on the far right, probably would be a libertarian position. And then on the y-axis, that's your social / identity dimension. So at the top, you're looking at more socially conservative voters, and at the bottom, you're looking at more socially liberal voters. Basically what you see is that Trump took the top two quadrants. So he basically had an embryo, an electorate, or maybe even a potential party, which is basically socially conservative and left or right, whatever that even means, on economic issues. And what I find really striking about this is that there are very few voters in the libertarian quadrant. That would be the lower right quadrant, where you have organizations like the American Enterprise Institute and the Heritage Foundation, Cato Institute, pretty much all quote unquote conservative, the Koch brothers, etc. Are down in the lower right-hand quadrant, where there are basically no voters. And in my view, this is a serious problem, because it's again actually a sign of separation, a sign of the separation of American civil society, which are our organizations, which is something that we're supposed to be proud of, from any relationship with the issues facing the electorate. That's the reason why they were all opposed to Trump in 2016, aside from the fact that he's kind of a wrecking ball and irresponsible and so on and so forth, and irresponsible in his rhetoric. I have no problem saying any of those things, but that wasn't why they were opposed to him. Those were just arguments they were reaching for. They were opposed to him because he threatened their political views and even in some cases their economic status. So what about these voters, just to the red voters, just to the right, who are a little bit economically conservative? Many of those people probably just thought that Obama was a wasteful spender or was spending on things that they disapproved. There are very few ideological economic libertarians in this country, and although the Republican electorate, from pretty much the Nixon era onward, was a kind of coalition of economically free market people, foreign policy interventionists, and social conservatives. There's probably, aside from the people who work at those think tanks, no actual people who simultaneously hold the views that we should invade Iran, slash Social Security benefits, and an abortion. I mean, that's not an actual constituency in the country, and the Republican Party is going to stay stuck as long as it thinks that it is. So what about 2020? Just wanted to put in a couple of comments in there. If you haven't read this article by Nate Cohn from the New York Times this summer, you've seen a lot of headlines that Trump is extremely unpopular, or his unfavorables have been rising. That's primarily in parts of the country that are already on the left. So this was a chart that was in that article. This is President Trump's approval rating among 2018 voters. So the purple areas are areas where his popularity is below 40%. And if it just keeps dropping in those areas, it drags the national average down So you're really looking at Los Angeles, Seattle, New York, Boston, Philadelphia, D.C., places like that, where his popularity was already bad and is getting worse. But if you look at the tipping point states from the 2016 election, he's not doing that bad. So overall, the president's approval rating was 47.1% in Wisconsin. And so Nate Cohn points out that the president's advantage in the Electoral College, at least based on his approval rating, is fairly similar to what it was in 2016. So the big 6 states there that political scientists tend to talk about, or voting analysts, are your Florida, Michigan, Minnesota, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. Hillary won Minnesota and New Hampshire. Trump won the other 4, and something like that might very well happen again. A friend of mine has said, I don't know if he said this publicly, so I won't quote him, that Elizabeth Warren was basically designed in a laboratory to irritate voters in Michigan, in Wisconsin, and Western Pennsylvania, New Hampshire. So, watch this space. That's your corresponding 2016 electoral map. Those core swing states have actually become more conservative over the last 20 years or so. This is from the Center for Politics.org blog called Crystal Ball on the big swing states in 2020, looking at the Democratic versus Republican identification and liberal versus conservative identification in those states. So you've got those categories, the year 2000, the year 2016, and the percentage of change. So you can see that conservative identification has actually increased in Florida by almost 4 percentage points, Michigan by almost 10, Minnesota by 11, New Hampshire by over 3, Pennsylvania by over 8, and Wisconsin by over 6. So if the election comes down to those 6 states, could still go the way of at least Trump. Where would Trump's policies slice? This is a chart of, again, you got on the x-axis, you've got different issues that are mapped out there. And then X is the percentage of Republicans saying that issue is very important. And Y is the percentage of Democrats saying that issue is very important. And I would suggest that Trump's policies probably slice there, like that. They would take, and that's how he talked. And that's how he talked during the 2016 campaign, right? He's not going to cut your benefits, and he's kind of sympathetic to single-payer health care. If you told him it was okay, he would definitely go for it. He'd like to take over the educational system in the country. No, I don't know. But he's not going to. He doesn't want to cut Social Security, Medicare. He wants infrastructure investment. He didn't get that, or he didn't get it. He didn't get the infrastructure investment that he wanted, but he wants it. Anyway, have a look at the other issues. Obviously, the term economy there is highly underspecified. What does that mean? Usually the way that pulls out is whether there's a recession or not, is whether people feel the economy is going well. So if there's a recession within the next year, you could still lose. All those states could switch back. So how did we get here? How did we get to this point? And how do we get to this point in the electorate? And what is the Republican Party doing about it? Or what, if anything, is the Republican Party thinking with regard to this electorate? How did we get here? Again, I'm just going to put up a few charts to remind you of things that you probably already have an awareness of from the 2016 campaign. This is a study called the China Shock by a major economist at MIT, David Autor. And you can actually go to, if you just Google the China Shock, it's a website, and you can mouse over county by county all across the country and find the areas that were most affected, particularly after, most of these effects really take place after the entrance of China into the World Trade Organization. So these don't exactly map on to the parts of the country that swung hard for Trump, but these are we all know that these charts are pointing to things that are reality. During this time period, from 1994 to 2000, I was living in upstate South Carolina. I remember all the textile plants that were there because they smelled so bad. And after 6 years of living there, they no longer smelled bad because they were no longer there. So it was great, less pollution and, lots of layoffs. So it sounds like a success, right? Well, but this is a chart of this is a chart of separation and dislocation, and a sense that's held in a lot of parts of the countries. Lots of parts of the country, not only in the United States, but elsewhere, that they're forgotten or left behind. In France, they call it La France périphérique, the peripheral parts of France. And there's an author named Christophe Guillouis who has gone around France, writing about it's not all postcard, lovely. Charming towns. A lot of the towns have fallen on hard times, not only here but elsewhere. America's manufacturing decline is real. So over on the left, you've got the share of the world's high-tech manufacturing value added. China is not merely producing goods at Walmart. It's an outstanding industrial producer, and not on the basis of a totally free market capitalist system, but on the basis of something more like a corporatist system or a state-run corporatism, where there are independent firms which receive guidance and assistance from the state. Then on the right, you've got the annual change in U.S. manufacturing productivity sorted into durable and non-durable goods. So we're not making strides in manufacturing. What we are doing is making strides in the growth of those companies, which in the London press are called FANGs: Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, Snapchat. Companies which produce almost nothing but make a lot of profits, which should be taxed. This is a chart of this is basically a chart of what companies are spending their profits on. So the argument for capitalism is that companies have to have much of their profit privately held and available for their use, because what they will do with that is invest. The blue line would mark the percentage of roughly the blue and the green lines. What you're seeing there is a decline in spending on investment by these companies and an increase in spending on the repurchasing of their own stock. So they're just spending their profits on bolstering their own share prices. Yeah, obviously that doesn't fit with Trump's narrative about the stock market. I'm not making an apology for his economic management, but it's a problem. It's a problem that a few people have started to talk about. We've started to publish some articles on this, and Marco Rubio has picked up this problem as well. It shows there's a dislocation in the argument for capitalism, or the current form of capitalism. Another sign of the problems And most of these are charts that my colleague at American Affairs, Julius Krein, put together, or that we published in our journal. So this one is not one published in our journal. Just got to get my citations in. The one on the right there was published in our journal. The rest are from presentations that my colleague has put together, and I am borrowing to explain here. So this is national employment indexed growth by sector. They said the future of Uber for X industries would be all sorts of great. It would basically be like a Marxian utopia. You'd wake up in the morning, read a little bit of philosophy, drive a couple of Uber rides, deliver some packages from Amazon, and it would all work. But there was an Atlantic article, I think over 90% of Uber for X businesses have failed. A capitalist apologist would say, well, that just shows the success of the free market system weeding out unproductive companies. And a skeptic might say, well, why did we waste 10 years of economic productivity with this horrendous mistake? And Uber is one of those companies which has simply managed to survive longer than others. So not a lot of manufacturing growth, employment growth in manufacturing, not even in information technology, wholesale trade, retail trade. A lot of growth in the education industry. I'm very happy about that. Not going to criticize that. Leisure and hospitality. So basically, luxury services provided to the wealthy. That's going gangbusters. Anyway, I think we have most of us have an intuitive sense of this. Another underlying problem, difficulty in family formation. The United States fertility rate hit an all-time low twice in the last 2 decades, in 2018 and in 2006, below replacement level. Of course, you can fix that by bringing in other people. That's fine. That's one way. I have no inherent objection to that. But again, it's a sign of separation. It's a sign of a dislocation, that our economy is becoming more unproductive, and we're having difficulty forming successful families that would replace our population as well. There's a book coming out in the spring, which I think will be really good, based on some essays that he wrote for American Affairs, one of which was called "The New Class War." And this is Michael Lend from the University of Texas at Austin, and a longtime kind of, he calls himself a 1988 liberal. Sort of in favor of the old industrial development left, who became alienated from both the left and the right after 1988, when both of them became kind of neoliberal on economics, and the left became more socially progressive. So the point that Len makes is that pretty much all Western democracies, all the major Western European countries and the United States are undergoing this kind of separation. I don't know if he uses that word. That was the one I was picking on. But he talks a lot about the separation or exclusion of the heartland from different forms of overclass, like you got your more left-wing elites and more right-wing elites and centrist ones. But that's the new class war is between the heartland and the successful managerial elite, and he proposes a lot of interesting solutions in that. So that, I think, is obviously that's not a comprehensive account of what's really happening, but it's a start. So what's the plan? What's the Republican Party's plan? What's the Republican Party's plan in this? I'm not sure, but this headline does not give me a lot of confidence. This is House GOP to run in 2020 on reducing the debt that they helped grow. So, they passed some tax cuts And to pay for those, although it's not quite how taxes work, we're going to cut your Social Security, but you can keep your assault rifle. That seems to be the plan of a lot of House Republicans for 2020. If it is, they might win because people vote for Trump and really don't care so much about Congress. I think people, when they vote for the president, are voting for what they think is a legislator in chief. So he might carry on. He might carry a lot of the party with him, but they're not voting for those. They might vote a straight ticket or something like that, but they're not excited by these policies. So there's a real separation, I think, outside of Trump, who, again, I completely, there's no kind of criticism of him I wouldn't admit. But outside of Trump and a few members of the Republican Party, I would point to Marco Rubio and Josh Hawley as among the only ones who are kind of trying to think about what a post-Trumpian set of policies would be that would answer these underlying separations. Aside from them, I think there's not a lot of exciting news in the Republican Party. There's a real, someone sent me this, a link to this chart recently. There's a real separation of GOP policies from the base. Basically, you can think about a lot of GOP policies as assisting a class of people who will donate as much money as possible to defeat the GOP. So these are the 25 districts with the highest and lowest income inequality. So your pretty much all of your top wealthiest districts in this country, with a couple of exceptions in Texas and Florida, perhaps not surprisingly, are extremely Democratic, and those are also areas where most of the wealth that is held by those is from the financial services industry. So basically, the GOP tend to promote policies like elimination of the estate tax and things like that, which will eventually benefit, or softness on financial services industry, which are basically benefiting people who are their enemies, while promoting policies such as cutting Social Security and Medicare, which will decimate their own natural electorate. So by and large, I mean, in my view, a lot of those members of the GOP deserve to lose in some sense. They probably won't, because this voting doesn't work like that. But in many respects they deserve to lose, and their inattention to that separation of their policies from their base, or to use Marxist terms, the separation of base and superstructure, is what brought Trump along in the first place. The longer you go there, the stronger the reaction will be. So just a couple of more points to drive this home. This is an article from Public Citizen. That word slipped off the top of the page. This is called "Plutocrat Politics: How Financial Sector Wealth Fuels Political Ad Spending." I don't know how many others on the right think this is a problem, but I do, and I'm very sympathetic with Charlie Sullivan's proposals on that front. So what are we going to learn from this article? Well, the interesting chart that it has, which I'm about to show you, is donations to political parties by amount and by industry sector. So this is the chart. This is the top 100 individual donations to outside spending groups that are red, pro-Republican, or blue, pro-Democrat, in the 2017-2018 election cycle by source of wealth. And that's very, very interesting. And this, I think, drives home the point about the bizarre separation between Republican policies and their base. The two groups that are all in for the GOP, there's one of those groups that we like, and there's one of those groups we do not like. The one we like is industrial supply and distribution. Those are people who are actually making things in this country, and they support the Republican Party. And the other is the gambling industry. And that should really, really surprise you, or maybe not surprise you, but should be really disturbing. It's very disturbing to me. This is basically the usury class. So this is the gambling industry and payday lenders and things like that. Vice industries that have the Republicans in their pocket. So how to get out of that? I don't know. But there's a clear tension between a lot of the funding sources for the Republican Party, along with the think tanks that they have helped to create, and the actual base of the Republican Party. So instead of fighting to cut estate taxes, why not raise estate taxes? You'd mostly be taxing, at the upper end. Families that have their wealth from financial services industries, which are going to go to support Democratic Party policies. So there's really no reason for the Democrats to be, there's no reason for the Republicans to be fighting that battle at all. Same goes for a lot of the financial services policies that the Republicans support. Trump argued in favor of eliminating the tax deduction on carried interest, right, which allows a lot of these hedge fund managers to pay 20% tax on a lot of their profits rather than the maximum personal income rate of 37%. Well, those people spent 3 times as much those people had a 3 times greater ad spend on the Republican Party than on the Democratic Party. So basically, you could look at the Republican Party as advocating for policies that hurt its own base while supporting the superstructure of another party. So if you're wondering why people call it the stupid party, that's why. So I think that's a big problem. And it's one that, could really only be fixed by taking a line something like this. This is a tweet from Ross Douthat in June. I think the agenda of the post-fusionist faction is pretty clear. I described it in the column. Family subsidies, industrial policy, going after Silicon Valley, Hawley, and Rubio doesn't mean the GOP will go for it. But if they did go for it, they would win the top 2 quadrants of that chart forever.